Wow. Antonio, do you have any questions?
Yes. How how long time how long time you stay on that on Mars or out of the planet? How many years? Because I think you don't stay 20. You stayed less than 20, right?
Okay, so the timeline is something I always tell people to make. When people tell me they've been abducted or they have ongoing things, I'm always like, make a timeline. I have several that I've made, and I update my timeline because as I remember more information, more things change on it. So that's my best advice to everybody. So my timeline, I figure, is between 6 to 8 years I spent on Earth out of those 20 years in Seattle and Peru, and California. And about 12 years in space, about 6 months, three months on the moon, 6 months on Mars, and 12 years on Ceres colony.
I understand better because it's very hard to understand all these thing about the time.
Yeah.
Not only that, but the entire time that I was gone adds up to about 18 years. And this is also very, very confusing. It's an important detail for people that are experiencing this. So many hundreds of people have contacted me that feel they've gone through the same thing. And the time frame of it is a very important thing. People need to have a time, you know what I mean? Like if you're a researcher, you have to log when it began, when what happens, and how long the distance is between. Because if you're being interacting with spacefaring intelligences, in order to travel long distances of space, they can also travel time. And so they can get you when you're 4 and come back. To them, it's the next day, and they get you when you're 12. And for you, you had 8 years. So the timeline is very, very important.
When you did the abduction and you did your time, you remember how old you were when you were picked up, and then how old you were when you came back, right? That's how you figured it was 20 years.
What I was told by one of the reptiles during the process, when they said we're gonna borrow your consciousness for 20 years, that was their exact words. We're gonna borrow your consciousness for 20 years.
And when did they ask? When did they tell you that?
In the very beginning, when I was in that lab. After they ran some tests, they had to run tests to make sure they could even do it. They ran a genetic test to see that I was compatible with that technology, and the test came back and said just barely. Apparently, some people can go for a couple sets of 20s, 40 years and beyond. It's depending on genetics, on how whatever. I don't understand. When they came back and said I had the genetics for 20 years, and I asked why just 20, and he's told me that every species at the 20-year mark, if they go out and come back, once they stay beyond 20, it greatly increases the chance of mental breakdown, of going insane. And so they stop. There's a law that it's 20. There's 20 years at a time. You go 20 years. If you have the genetics to do more than one, you would go 20 years, and then they put you back for 20 years and come get you and do another 20 years. But I only had the genetics for one. That's why. To answer, but I wanted to get back to another point, was that the last few years, or all of the years that I was working on a craft, when I was on Ceres colony, the missions, we would leave, say, on Ceres colony, a small planet in between Mars and the asteroid belt. We would leave and go on missions on a ship, and we would leave the stars and go to other star systems. We would leave at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we would get back at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then go back into the. So that day counted towards my 20 years. But overall, in terms of the time on Earth, I was taken from about 82 to 2000. It was the year 2000 when it was over. Because about 18 years, because 2 years of it were time jumps that the ship would leave and come back, and those added up. I did the math, and it tells how many missions. Not every day we did that extra solar missions, but we did plenty of them.
Okay.
Tony, when you talk with Michael Sala, you told him something about China Lake. What is China Lake? Because people in Spanish, the Spanish people, they don't know much about China Lake, and I think it's very important for them.
So China Lake, has been involved in the. There have been some lawsuits about it. So so there's a lot of evidence, not just me talking about it, but China Lake is an Air Force base there in that town. It's a place in Southern California, and they were in trouble for putting underage people through an MK Ultra trauma-based mind control program, and they feel that a lot of human trafficking goes through there, and a lot of child trafficking goes through there through underground bases in the China Lake area, and especially the MK Ultra mind control program, trauma-based mind control. So when I was originally taken, after the laboratory, he said, we're going to borrow your consciousness for 20 years. I said, no, I can't do that. I have parents and things. He said, no, you're going to come back in time. You're going to go right back home, and it'll be like tomorrow. He explained it to me. So I agreed. They put me down on the table. They put a needle. They put a latex sheet over me and cut a hole so I could see my eye and cut so I could breathe through it. And a needle went in, and I saw stars. Felt like I got punched. And I woke up in Inyokern in a portable next to, I believe, Inyokern, which is right next to China Lake. It's another airport, the town over from China Lake. And I went through an MK Ultra style trauma-based mind control program for about 6 months.
6 months? Only 6 months?
About that was the.
And after that?
And after that, I was shipped to Seattle. I was shipped to Seattle, and I was only there a few weeks for the person that owned me. I was a piece of equipment, and they were doing. They would give us drugs and put us under close to death, like near death, and then they were having us channel, and they had like psychic readings, like they could tell, like they were using us. They would ask us questions about what's going to happen in the future and business questions and things. And then from there, I was shipped to Puerto Tawantinsuyo, Peru. And they used me on monthly shipments of probably cocaine going from Tawantinsuyo, Peru to Santa Marta, Colombia. And they would put me under on the airplane and use me to know if there were police or if there was bad weather or navigation. They would drug me and put me under. I have artist drawings of that too, I'll send you. Okay. And I did that for about 2 years. And that was probably under Project Grill Plane.
Grill Plane?
Yeah, I'm working with few researchers right now for my book, and we're tracking down the funding for that in the same time frame for the remote viewing and those abilities, splintered off into other project numbers, 4028 and Project 4028 and a few others. And it was in one of those that got funded for that project that I was in. We're trying to track down a lot of things about it right now.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about your book later on, because we know that you're writing a book, and when is it going to be ready? I'm waiting for it.
We're waiting now. I was looking for the book already.
Soon this year. There'll be a draft of it this year.
Tony, how they move inside right here on the earth? How they move it from China Lake to Seattle?
So that's a great question. So when we were done, I went through it's a long story, the trauma-based mind control program. When we were done, I was myself and about a dozen kids, one girl and the rest were boys. And we all went through this program of mind control and tested and then did remote viewing experiments and then drugs, everything. When they were done, they loaded us up on a green, like an army bus, like an old school bus, but it was painted green. And we drove from Inyokern to China Lake and into an Air Force building there somewhere. I remember that there were airplanes on pedestals, like when you're driving through town, there would be a pedestal with an airplane on it. And we went to a building that had an airplane on a pedestal in the parking lot, and it was Air Force people, and everybody was in uniform. And we got in the elevator. There was an elevator there, and we went down, and the doctor that was in charge, took care of us, was talking with somebody that was high ranking, a guy in uniform, and he looked at me, don't say anything. Well, there was somebody else, and when they got off the elevator, he said, okay, now we can talk about it. He put a key into the elevator. He had a key, and he put it in, and then he hit a series of numbers on, where you select what floor you're going to. He put a key there and hit a few different buttons, and we went down, and when the door opened, there was a train station. There was a train there, and we rode a train, and it was very fast. We made a stop somewhere in California, and then I was dropped off near Helena, Montana. And when I came out, it was an old building. It was a very small building up the elevator, and it was in Montana. It was only a few hours later, so it was a great distance in a short time. A very fast train, like a hyper train. And then I was picked up by the owner, the guy who owns me. His wife picked me up and drove me to Seattle. It was 2 days that we drove. We stayed the night in a hotel one night.
Could you tell us something about that family? It's very important for the people to know about that family.
Taken to Seattle, that family, I don't talk about them publicly. Like, I don't say their name in order to protect myself.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I say that he was a billionaire in the Seattle area that was into shipping.
Also, was that billionaire? No, that was not the one that the kid's father, right? He wasn't.
No.
No, okay.
Right.
It was
somebody else.
The kid's father is the one that. Oh, okay. So the kid's father is the one that kind of got you into being abducted.
Into the program, exactly. And myself and other kids in my school that time, I believe they took a bunch of kids.
Okay.
I asked Tony about that, Laura, because I know I heard him talking about that. That happened on the house, about the party and everything like that. Can you explain, because this thing is very actual right now. People talking a lot about this right now, this time.
It's very important. It's very, very important, because when I first realized, like I said, I saw the Randy Kramer interviews, and that's how when my memories came. There were other people coming forward and talking about the secret space program. There was really nothing that I could say to prove my account to some researchers, but I was the first person that you had. So I remembered he was a practicing Satanist. There was ritual human sacrifice. There were satanic rituals, and I was used in a sex service. After Peru, I was no good. When I was closer to 13 to 16, I went back to that house in Seattle, and they were having parties that were fundraisers for political parties. And at night, they were having parties that are just like what we hear now with the Epstein Island, same exact kind of style of parties, and with the Hillary, the Pizzagate, and with the Hillary emails, all that stuff. I was talking about that in 2015 before any of it came out. So to me, that instance, that culture that owned me, and I was a secret space program asset, a black project asset. They owned me and were using me as a sex slave during that time. So for me to say that prior to anything really coming out about it is very supportive of my, unfortunately, is some of my best evidence.
Yes, I remember you talking about that, because I saw when did I see your video? I don't remember, but it must have been around 2016, I believe. I don't remember, but I seen your videos, and then you haven't done a lot of videos since. I know you've done videos with.
I have. I'm up over 70 or 80 videos.
Oh, really?
There's a link with all of them. I'll add yours on there as well. There's a link with most of the videos that I have on a website.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll send you the link, and we'll send you the video once it's edited. Because a lot of people speak Spanish, and they're into this. I mean, they're barely, I guess, awakening about all this stuff, because a lot of people don't know about all
Don't
this.
believe.
And they don't believe. Yeah, exactly. They don't believe. Now we have the proof.
It's hard to them to understand that kind of things, Tony, one question, and it's very important, maybe. What is the connection between secret space program and narco traffic?
And where?
Narco traffic,
the drug dealing.
Drug dealers and
that's their money. They're making money off of it. Then when you sell drugs, there's no taxes. There's no receipt. There's no tax. There's no trace. There's no trace of it. If you make $1 million selling hot dogs to fund your space program, you have to pay taxes. You have to provide sales receipts. You have to say what happened to the money. If you sell $1 billion in cocaine, there are no receipts. There are no taxes. Nobody knows where the money even went to. You just have a bunch of money. That's why.
I tell you that because I don't understood before why they sent to you to Peru, And I think you went over there to help some kind those kind of
that was their operation. No, they set it up. It was probably the CIA behind private billionaires that used the CIA, and it's all the same group of people, and all the money that they made, which is a lot of money. When you think about the cocaine trafficking, look at the people that are publicly getting in trouble for it. They've hundreds of millions of dollars worth of money. So that money can cover up and be used for anything that they want. So they put that system in place. And these are people that have been in business long before there was the United States. These billionaires, these families that have access to this stuff, they've been doing things under the covers of the world long before the United States was around. They knew, hundreds of years ago, they knew about the coca plant, and what it did to people. They knew it was something to be exploited. And lo and behold, then they discover space flight. The Germans get into space. They discover space flight, and they go, we need to build this stuff our own. How do we get money that no one knows about?
To fund it.
You know what I mean? It's black money. So once you get once you get an income source, not, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not hot dogs we're talking about. We're talking about billions of dollars a year, hundreds of billions of dollars. Now you can make your own spaceport. You can build your own spaceship. You can build your own space colony. It's enough
underground basis too, where nobody can see.
Apart from the government, apart from the taxpayer, apart from what the people think, no one has a say in what happens to that money.
Okay, Laura.
So you were sold to Seattle, this billionaire in Seattle, and then they used you as a sex slave, and and then he sold you to this drug dealers, and then they and then they send you to Peru. What happened in Peru? How did that happen?